Welcome to Growing Your Firm, brought to you by Jetpack Workflow. We're here to help firms unlock the secrets to help you reach your goals faster. And now, here's your host, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow, David Cristello.
Hey everybody, David Cristello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Adam Lean. He is the CEO and co-founder of the CFO Project, training and certification program that trains accountants, CPAs, bookkeepers, and enrollment agents on how to start or add CFO advisory services so that you can escape the accountant's trap and have a scalable way to grow your firm and finally earn what you're worth. Now, I was talking with Adam hitting the record button, and advisory services are really exploding. We've talked with folks that, maybe they're launching or growing a department inside of a mid-market firm, which is exciting. And then we talked with smaller firm owners that want to add this as a highly profitable service add-on, if you will. And it certainly not only drives a lot more profit in the short term, but I think makes you a more valuable acquisition target. So we're going to talk about how to grow it, how to evolve packaging, pricing, talent, so much more. But Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, very cool. So help me understand the current state of advisory services. Who are you seeing? Like I kind of mentioned, the mid-market departments and the smaller firms. Do you kind of work with both, or is there one more so than the other that you typically kind of enters your cohorts?
Yeah, I would say about 75% are smaller firms. They have less than 5 employees. And a good chunk of those are solo practice owners. It's them and maybe a virtual assistant or a couple other, a bookkeeper or CPA that works for them. And then the other 25% are larger firms. They have anywhere from, 5 to 25 employees that work for them.
Okay. Got it. Very cool. Yeah. And it reminds me, as you mentioned, this kind of sub 5, we had this interview with, her name was Brianne Mode. She had started doing advisory. This was a few years ago, called 5-ish years ago. And she was flying out to a conference, met a gentleman at that time. He was working, he still works for CBiz, and they wanted to launch advisory. And then I think they had maybe a false start or two, and they eventually just pulled in her firm to then scale up advisory in their large firm, which I think is cool. So it's kind of any way you slice it, you might end up in a large firm potentially. But before we dive into packaging and pricing, can we just baseline with like what would you bucket in for advisory services?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because I think there's a lot of misconception out there. So when somebody hears CFO, typically they think the CFO of Coca-Cola, the CFO of a large business, even fractional CFO. That term, when people think of that, they think I'm going to come in and I'm actually going to be an employee on a fractional basis. So I'm going to work, say, 15 hours a week for this company. When we say CFO advisory, we define it for a very specific audience. And I'm going to define it, and I'm going to tell you the audience that we define it for. The audience we define it for are small and medium-sized businesses, which make up majority of all businesses anyways. I mean, last I heard, 99% of all businesses are considered small. They have less than $5 million annual revenue. In fact, only 9% of all businesses make more than $1 million in revenue anyways. So they're small businesses, the majority of businesses out there. So when we say CFO advisory services, we say CFO advisory services that fit those small businesses. So we're not talking about offering CFO or advisory services for large, complex, billion-dollar businesses that really need the experience of a CFO for like Coca-Cola or General Motors as CFO. But what they do need is somebody that can do something like what a CFO does. Think about the average, like a heating and air business, maybe doing $3 million a year. The owner is typically an expert in heating and air. That's why they got into business. A dentist starts a dental practice because they're a dentist. A chef starts a restaurant, on and on. So all these small businesses are made up of people that are experts at their craft. So they need somebody like a CFO. They don't need a CFO, but they need somebody like a CFO to come in and just guide them. So when we say CFO advisory services, we use those terms interchangeably, outsource CFO / advisory. We're saying you need to just be somebody that a small business owner can trust to guide them on having a growing, successful business. So that's what we define outsourced CFO advisory services as. Not a fractional CFO. In fact, we call it a productized CFO service. So not a fractional, but an actual productized, and we can get that shortly if you want, but a CFO advisor that can just guide the business owner towards being a growing and successful business, which at the end of the day is what Coca-Cola's CFO's job is. I mean, think about it. When you boil it down, every business needs that.
Yeah. Well, I love this. Let's kind of play on this, 3 million HVAC company example. What potentially could a firm offer to them that would be in the outsourced CFO package? Like, are you a recommend good, better, best model? And then what are they delivering in this service?
Yeah. So we actually don't recommend any good, better, best or multiple packages. We suggest that you offer one package to make it very clear and easy. And we do that for a couple of reasons. And the main reason we do it is to eliminate any confusion on the client's part. You want the prospect, your potential client, to really understand what you're providing and what they're going to get out of it. And so because let's face it, when you go up to a heating and air, let's say a heating and air, the $3 million heating and air business owner, and say, I offer CFO services now, even if you're their tax accountant, they're not going to get it. They don't think they need a CFO. They don't understand what a CFO is. So we recommend that
what they're going to hear is complex and expensive.
Totally. Absolutely.
Complicated and expensive.
Exactly. And you cannot say, and I'm speaking to accountants very bluntly here. A lot of accountants like to position their services from a logical standpoint because logically it makes sense. You need CFO services, you need accounting services, you need tax services, you need proper books. Logically, that makes sense. But the vast majority of business owners the vast majority of humans buy on emotion and justify later with logic. So you can't logically sell somebody something they don't understand. You've got to appeal to their emotions. So what do business owners care about? What is emotional to them? Well, it's having a business that doesn't fail. It's having a business that puts food on their table, their family's table. It has a business that's growing, has a business that makes them look good in front of their friends. It appeases their ego, their pride. They're proud of their business and they want it to succeed. So we've got to sell them on something that appeases their emotions. And when you could do that, you'll have no problem selling them a high-ticket advisory service. And we suggest you charge no less than $1,500 a month, but anywhere between $1,500 and $5,000. It depends on the business itself. But let's say on average, $2,500. We suggest you charge on average $2,500 for your service, flat monthly fee per month. So it's $2,500 per month. And you have no problem selling that high-ticket service to a business owner if you do it the right way, if you appeal to their emotions and you position what you are offering in a way that makes absolute sense, that they would be dumb to not take you up on this offer.
So I want to get into how to sell this without, for lack of a better word, spooking a prospect. Totally. CFO, I don't need that. That's for the big guys. We're not that. I want to get into how to sell and what that language sounds like. But before we do, when you talk about these one package, $1,500 to $5,000 a month flat, what are the deliverables? That is it budget via actual forecasting? Is it industry benchmarking? Like, what do you see as the typical things that are being provided to the, to the sub $5 million business owner?
Yeah, it's really two things. And we have to keep things simple for the client to understand. So it's really two things. In these two buckets, there are numerous things you have to do, but it boils down to two things. The first is we show the business owner, without looking at numbers, without looking at financials, we show the business owner what's working and what's not in their business. So that's number one. And we do it by a color-coded scoreboard. We call it a scoreboard where it's color-coded, literally green, red, and yellow. All the drivers that drive the client's cash flow. So everything that impacts revenue, profit, and cash flow, all those drivers, those leading indicators, we measure and we assign a color-coded score to. So anything that's on track towards hitting the client's targets for the year, anything that's on track is green. Anything that is not on track is red. Anything that's sort of in the middle is yellow that we need to keep an eye out for. So that's number one, is the scoreboard. Number two is an action plan. So everything that's in red, we tell the client, look, they are in red because they are the most critical things that you need to focus on the next 30 days before we meet again. We need to get those things in red into yellow at least in order for you to stay on track. So these, if you think of dominoes, it's the biggest domino that you need to knock over in order to knock over all the other dominoes. So if you knock over this domino, you will be on track towards having an all green scoreboard, which means you will hit your targets at the end of the year. So the number one's the scoreboard, where you're showing your client what's working and what's not without having to look at a P&L, a balance sheet, things that they don't understand nor care to look at anyways. And number two, an action plan where they know exactly at the end of your meeting with your client every month, whether you meet in person or via Zoom or whatnot, they know exactly the 2 to 3, 5 things, whatever, that they need to do. Specific things, not general, not theory things, specific things that they need to do in order to move the needle on one of those drivers that are in the red. And that's it.
What's an example of a red line item, and then what would the CFO surface or recommend?
Yeah.
And then I might have a gotcha for you after that.
I love gotcha questions. Let's take an example of one of my clients, former clients, because I don't do full-time CFO work anymore since I'm running the CFO project. But one of my former clients was a doctor. He owned a large colonoscopy screening practice. He had about 15 doctors working for him. It was a large, like almost $10 million company. And all he did was colonoscopy screenings. He got leads from family practitioner doctors referring their patients to him. All right, you're 55 years old. You need a colonoscopy. Go see my client. And so the office person at the primary care's office would schedule the appointment for their patient to come see my client or one of my client's doctors. Well, when you schedule an appointment for a colonoscopy, I don't know if you've ever had one, but I got very familiar working with this client over several years about what's involved. He even trained me to do a colonoscopy, which is a fun story for another day. But when you get a colonoscopy appointment, the doctor has to reserve a room for approximately 30 minutes, has to reserve an anesthesiologist, which are not cheap, has to reserve 2 nurses, and then the doctor themselves and the room. So a lot of money's tied up in this appointment. 60% of the time, 60% of these patients that were referred would actually show up for their appointment. 40% would not. Despite them sending all these reminders and whatnot, 40% of people would not show up. Now, my client knew that a lot of people didn't show up. He didn't realize the extent. And I told him, I said, if you could get that number from 60 to 65% in the next 90 days, you'll add $400,000 to your bottom line. Not only in the savings that you would save by redeploying all this expense, but in the revenue that would come in from the colonoscopy, $400,000. So the driver that we focused on is the essentially conversion rate, for lack of a better word. We use a different terminology for him, but conversion rate. You have all these leads, these patients being referred, only 60% converted to a patient. So getting the conversion rate from 60 to 65%, that's what I said. The next 90 days, we're going to focus just on this. And we had him and his office manager and his head nurse and myself, and we sat down and figured out how to improve this number. Now, I didn't know anything about his world. I'm not a doctor. had no experience in the medical world and haven't had a colonoscopy, but yet I was able to point him in the right direction and lead a discussion on how to get this number up. They are the experts in their business. I was the one pointing them in the right direction.
I love that. The maybe immediate worry I have thinking about this scoreboard is, business owner wants to grow, wants to go 20% year over year, 10% year over year, whatever. They want to drive top line growth. What's the number that's red? Leads, whatever they call it. You can call it a pizza shop. New customers coming in. Well, It's not like it used to be. We have some competitors, and kids don't like the way we make our pizzas anymore. And things are changing. You kind of throw your arms up, and it's like, well, we'll try Facebook ads, Google ads, whatever. And they kind of shotgun out lead generation activities. And it's if it was easy to drum up a ton of leads, the problem might have already been solved. And some owners, especially if they got in the business of, well, I'm a chef, I want to do the restaurant, I'm dentist, they're not marketing minded. And so I'm wondering, in the place where the firm owner or leader is sitting down with the client and it's kind of a lead generation problem, I mean, how do you navigate a conversation where maybe the business owner doesn't really have the skill set or desire to maybe do the things to grow that piece, and then being the advisor on your end, it's not like you're going to step in and start running ads for them. And so have you found ways to kind of navigate these situations where owners essentially have an emotional resistance, or they are not thinking in a very resourceful manner of how to turn things green?
That's a good question. And I mean, honestly, that's not just with leads. That's with anything that drives cash flow.
Yeah, it could be pricing. I was talking with a firm, an accounting owner, a couple months ago, and I don't know, we were just talking about it. He goes, I've been telling this guy to increase his prices for 3 years, and probably longer, and he just wouldn't do it. And I showed all the competitors in the market; they all were higher prices, and you know what? He had to close his doors, right? So, yeah, I mean, it could be pricing, it could be leads, it could be anything.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things I want to unpack from what you said, and it's a fantastic question. One is, most business owners have an idea as to what's wrong with their business, and they're usually wrong. I mean, like my client, he was my colonoscopy client. He was focused on the wrong things in his business, and the absolute wrong things. And I came in and looked at holistically his entire business model and the financials, and I understood numbers. And the only number that matters is cash flow. Like, you can generate all the revenue in the world, but if you're not making a cash flow, not just profit, but cash flow, getting cash and redeploying that cash to get more cash, then it doesn't matter. So we've got to focus on things that increase cash flow. Like, here's another example. I had a client in South Carolina who owned a large restoration company. So if somebody's house was flooded or fire, broke out, they came in and just restored it essentially. And anyways, the owners were focused on getting leads, like hands down. They were focused on leads. They were spending money at the local ballpark, $25,000 a year to have their billboard next to the scoreboard at the ballpark. And they were doing all these things, Facebook ads, joining BNI groups, all these other things to get leads. But their problem wasn't leads anymore. Their problem was the fact that once they got a lead, they would send a very junior project manager, somebody who knows nothing about sales, out to the person's home that was flooded in the middle of the night and try to get them to sign up. And it was a very difficult conversation because they're not a salesperson. So we switched that and said every time a lead came in, we send a qualified salesperson out there alongside the project manager. They got the sale at a much higher clip. And by the way, we had them cut the leads. We closed the billboard at the ballpark, all these other things. So the business owner thinks it's one thing because it just makes sense. Oh, I just need more leads coming in, but it may not be. I mean, another example is you could have a retail store. I worked with a bike shop one time that had a major inventory problem. And he had like $800,000 worth of inventory, and his days inventory outstanding was like 3 years. I mean, it was some ridiculous amount. And it's like, that's your problem. It's like, you don't need to sell. Yes, you need to sell more bikes, but you need to fix the cash flow problem. We need to liquidate some of the stuff to get cash. But my point is that the business owner usually doesn't understand numbers because they're not numbers people. And the only thing that matters in business is a number, cash flow. So what better person in the business owner's lives to solve this is a financial person that gets training on how to be a CFO advisor. And I personally think that an accountant would make a way better advisor than a business coach who's literally that's their job, is because most business coaches don't understand the numbers. They'll make decisions without understanding the impact of cash flow. And so It's better to get somebody that understands numbers and equip them to be an advisor. Yes, an advisor, if they understood numbers, would be fantastic. But accountants and bookkeepers, I mean, that's literally the job of a CFO at a big company, is to help navigate and guide the leadership team on making money. And all businesses need that.
Hey, Growing a Firm community, David here. Just want to share a quick note about Jetpack Workflow, our accounting workflow software. Now, for almost a decade, we've helped 5,000 plus accountants, bookkeepers, and firm owners use Jetpack Workflow to better organize accounting workflows, automate recurring tasks, and easily track and monitor client work. Never miss a deadline again. Stop using messy Post-it notes, generic tools, legacy systems, or spreadsheets to handle workflows and bring sanity to your client work. Now head on over to jetpackworkflow.com. That's jetpackworkflow.com to get started with a 14-day free trial or schedule a one-on-one demo with us. All right, now let's get back to the show. I love that. And you know what? That's so true. I think I will buy into your thesis here that most business owners are focused on the wrong number, and everybody or the wrong tactic to fix their business. And everybody kind of has their preference, you know, whether it's thinking about leads or thinking about product. It's rarely that someone, you know, obsesses over price. I feel like that's like a common one that a lot of people neglect. But to shift gears a little bit, let's talk about selling this. You talked about something early on, and you said, you know, these business owners, sub 5 million, even sub 10 million in your example, they might hear the word CFO and they think that's for the big guys. That sounds really expensive. It's really complex. I don't think I need that. So what have you found to be a successful way to introduce the concept of an outsourced CFO and start to pull the prospect into seeing the value of that relationship, because it's a non-trivial investment on their end, right? So what have you found to work well from a sales perspective?
Yeah, a great question. And I'm going to answer it a couple of different ways. When you go to the doctor and the doctor says you have this major problem that you will die in a year if you don't solve it, but I can solve it and it's going to cost X amount. Who wouldn't pay that amount of money?
Right.
So,
of course, yeah.
But if that same doctor went up to the person without even explaining the problem and said, I'm good at what I do, I need you to even see me, pay, $100,000. Most people will be like, well, I don't know. Without the context, it doesn't matter. So we've got to give context to our prospects. So again, we can't go to a prospect and say, hey, I'm a CFO. You want to hire me? Because CFO is all the rage right now. Most people would say no, because they wouldn't understand what you are, or what a CFO is, nor do they think they need one. But if you give them a context as to what a CFO is, then it makes sense. So here's one example. There's plenty of examples, but one example of how to give context. If you're somebody's tax accountant, after tax season, say it's in May, you call a client up and say, a client where you've only earned $900 a year, which is like the average tax return a year that you get from one person. One of your business owner clients that's been paying you $900 every year for the past 5 years, and you call them up and say, hey, or send them an email even. I was looking over your tax return and I spotted some red flags and some opportunities I see for growth in your business. Can we hop on a Zoom call so we can go through those? What business owner would ignore that email? Nobody. Because the financial person in their life, somebody they already trust, is telling them that they've spotted some red flags and opportunities they see for growth in their business, the thing that literally puts food on their family's table. Who would ignore that email? Nobody. Notice in that email, the accountant didn't use the word CFO, didn't use the word advisor, didn't use the word financials. Or I'm going to review your financials with you. None of that. You appeal to the emotions and put it in context why you should even have this conversation. So the prospect or the client responds back, says, absolutely. Can we meet tomorrow? And then that starts this conversation where you give them context.
And you can rinse, repeat that mindset, whether it's a tax return or P&L or whatever you're doing.
If you're a bookkeeper and you do books for somebody every month, perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
Because most business owners think of accounting and bookkeeping as a necessary evil. It just has to happen. Somebody's got to do it. I don't really care how it gets done. I don't even know how it gets done. Just do it. And so they relegate accounting to the bottom of the things that they have to think about every day. But all of a sudden, if you could be the person in their lives that can give them advice on how to have a growing, successful business, one that actually stays in business, because most businesses fail, then your value will go from the very bottom of their list to the very top of their list.
Interesting. So everybody would bite at that, or most people would bite at that, right? I found an opportunity. It looks like I saw some areas of growth or opportunity in your return, P&L. You jump on a call. What are you showing them a kind of a mini scorecard at that point, or like what does that call look like? And then when does it transition to, hey, you should hire me? Like how does that arc look, overall?
So the prospect responds back and says, yeah, I would love to jump on a Zoom call. And so you get on a Zoom call with the prospect. And the idea is that you are trying to uncover what makes them tick. Because again, you have to appeal to their emotions. If you uncover what makes them tick, what their pain points are, why they got in the business in the first place, what their dreams or goals are, what their business goals are, and what their personal goals are, you have to uncover all of that and get the prospect talking. And if you could do that, if you're talking any more than 5% of the time, you're doing something wrong. Because typically when accountants talk to clients, it's all about numbers. And most clients or most prospects don't care. So if you could get them talking and by asking, questions designed to get them talking, like, tell me about your business. Why did you get into business in the first place? If we were meeting 5 years from today's date and everything went perfectly according to the plan that you have for your business, what would your business look like? And just get them talking. I mean, I had somebody after this one time, ironically enough, there's another restoration company. This owner said at the end of this conversation, which was only supposed to be about 20 minutes, it turned into about an hour and a half. He said, this felt like a therapy session.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want the prospect to assign emotion to us, because then when we end up pitching our services, not at that meeting, but several meetings later, when we end up pitching our services, our CFO advisory services, it will be an absolute no-brainer because we've already built up the emotion. We've already built up the trust. They've assigned all their pain points to you that you're going to help them fix.
And now, how do you reconcile? So if you send an email that's, I spot some opportunities in your return, ways to probably save you some money, let's hop on a call, and they're like, heck yes, I would love to. When do you deliver that information versus asking a lot of questions to understand their situation? Yeah,
you first got to appeal to their emotions. So you ask all the questions first. Then at the end of that conversation, the idea is to say, this is fantastic information. What I'm going to do now is combine this with my assessment of your business. And then let's schedule another Zoom call for, let's say next week. And I'm going to go through the assessment, the financial assessment. I'm going to spot red flags, opportunities for growth. At this point, if you don't already have access to their books, you would ask for access to their books, which I have never, and I've been doing this for almost 8 years. I have never had somebody not give me access to their books when pitched the right way. I've never had anybody, period, not give me access to their books, because I've always pitched it the right way through trial and error. I'm just a study of people. I know what makes people tick. And again, you've got to approach it not from a logical standpoint, an emotional standpoint. And so you get access to their books. Then the next meeting, you reveal the assessment. You go through the red flags, opportunities for growth, again, without looking at financials. You put it in clear, plain language. And then now that you're armed with this, the assessment of their numbers plus what makes them tick, you then relate the two together. If one of the business owner, your prospect, if what makes them tick is the idea that they wanted to start their own business because they want to be able to travel around the world and do missionary work for 3 months out of the year, and they wanted the time that a business would afford them. But right now, they're not able to do that because they're a business owner. And we all know that business owners work way harder usually than employees do. And they don't have time. So that's what makes them tick. You say, look, my goal is to not only help you have a growing, successful business that stays in business, but we're going to help you within the next 2 years get to a place where you can spend 3 months at least not in your business. And we're going to we need cash flow to be able to replace you and whatnot. That's just one example of how you can relate the two. And
is it fair to then say, so is it like, if you have an existing client, let's say you're doing these returns, you send them an email, I see some opportunities probably for some savings. Let's hop on a call.
Not savings. Opportunities for growth and red flags.
Yeah, there we go. Opportunities for growth and red flags. Yeah, love it. Okay. Opportunities for growth and red flags. And then they get on the call. That call is very important because you want to pull out what's important to that business owner. But you still deliver something, right? Are you delivering like a little appetizer of these opportunities on that call? Like, here's what I saw, but I'd love to. So you just kind of, you don't deliver any of that on that first call.
Well, you're delivering something very important. You're delivering the idea that a financial professional, somebody they can trust, is listening to them and telling listening to them tell all of their hopes and dreams. I know it sounds hokey, but
no.
Works.
I'm just wondering, like, would a prospect, like, clearly not, because it's worked, but like, so a business owner wouldn't be upset, like where are the opportunities? Like, I thought I was going to get the opportunities.
You're still going to deliver them, just not on that meeting. You're still going to deliver them the next meeting. Because here's the thing. Business owners think of the average business owner that you know. Who do they turn to for real help with their business? There's usually a handful of people they could turn to. They could turn to their employees. They could turn to their spouse. They could turn to their friends. They could turn to a business coach type person. They could turn to their accountant or bookkeeper, their banker. But those are likely the people that most business owners will turn to, but none of those people literally is going to give them the actual advice that they need. So when a financial type person comes along and and for 20 minutes to an hour sits with them or via Zoom and asks them questions designed to get them talking, and they're able to actually now talk to somebody that they can trust that gets it from a numbers standpoint, that's looking at the entire business, that's a very therapeutic hour for that prospect. Their stock in you will go dramatically higher, because who else has done that in their lives ever?
Yeah.
Especially somebody that gets it.
Do you call out the elephant in the room? I'm just thinking of like, me being a, impatient business owner myself, right? So I get an email, cool, I want to see the opportunities. I'm excited to get on this call. And then we go in for, 30, 45, 60 minutes. They get a 360 view of the business. Back of my head, I'm like, where are these opportunities? So do you kind of set up the call being like, the purpose of this call is I want to learn a little bit more about you so that I could really have conviction or confidence or prescribe the right strategies? Like, do you set that up, or maybe I'm getting too far in the weeds here, but I'm curious,
see what
like,
you're saying.
You manage. Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Okay. We use this analogy all the time in our program. Somebody that wants to date somebody, court somebody, what is their end goal? Get married, right?
Sure,
they want to get married to somebody. That's their end goal, which is, typically why most people date. Not everybody, most people date. When you go and meet somebody, let's say you met somebody on an app and you go meet them in a restaurant for the very first time, what does the conversation typically look like? Do you, as the person who intends to marry somebody, go in and say, all right, this is how this meeting is going to go for the next, 60 minutes before the appetizers come. And between this, we're going to talk about these 5 things. And then we're going to talk about this. And then we're going to do that. No, because that would be weird. You want to build a relationship with that person to get them to like you. If assuming you like them, you got to get them to like you. So you just got to have an organic conversation and ask them questions. Most people in a dating relationship, and when especially don't know the other person, you've got to ask the other person questions to get them talking. Because if you're talking all about yourself, you're going to lose your date. I mean, you just are.
I agree with that.
Yeah. and
on that first call, if it's all the firm owner talking,
totally,
I mean,
you're going to lose them.
It's gonna feel like a hardcore sales pitch.
Especially if it's an accountant talking. And I can say this because we're all accountants here. Most accountants are not fantastic at sales and marketing, but what you are fantastic at is being able to be a trusted advisor, or build a relationship with the person. Just be somebody that your prospect can like. Don't sell them anything. Don't be that person, that guy or girl that just wants to logically sell somebody on something you think they need. You've got to court them, much like you do in a dating relationship.
So Adam, I feel like we could go down the sales journey for hours because I mean it's such a big topic. It's big in the way that I think folks struggle a lot with it psychologically, right? And emotionally, how to deal with it. If our audience wants to reach out, learn more about your program, your content, who you are, what you're up to, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so our website is at thecfoproject.com, thecfoproject.com. We are a training company that trains accountants and bookkeepers on how to offer CFO services. But if you go to that website, at the very top, it says resources. There's a link that says free training. Every Thursday, myself and my business partner at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific, every Thursday, we do a training called How to Start a CFO Service. So if you're remotely interested in it, spend an hour with us and get free training. And you get, if you're a CPA, you get CPE credit as well.
I love it. Adam, this has been a real treat. I feel like we could probably, again, just go on and on with sales and marketing as it pertains to advisory and outsourced CFO services. We really appreciate you coming on. If somebody's listening, couldn't jot down all the notes, ideas, concepts, and frameworks that Adam was talking about, we covered a lot of ground here in about 30 minutes. You can always go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll do a full write-up. We're going to link to the CFOproject.com. Good job on the domain, by the way. And if you enjoyed the interview, leave a review. And if you really enjoyed it, share it out in the community. Drop it on social. Tag us. Tag Adam. We always love to see it out in the wild. Adam, it's been a real treat. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining Growing Your Firm, the podcast series for global, small, and medium-sized businesses ready to scale and increase profits. You can check out more podcasts by following the links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. At Jetpack Workflow, we're all about maximizing returns for accounting firms and CPAs. Check out more podcasts on growing your firm and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.